Welcome to the Credit Union Business News Podcast, the only all-digital, all-business resource for credit unions. This episode is sponsored by Bator Training and Consulting. We create environments where employees actually want to come to work and members want to keep coming back. Hi, I'm Kbator, your host for the Credit Union Business News Podcast, and this is a real treat. I've done a number of interviews, produced a number of shows, and this is one of the most aligned guests that I've ever come across in terms of culture and morale. And we recently had an awesome conversation on Cool Culture Corner, another one of my shows. I said, you've got to be on Credit Union Business News Podcast. But let me tell you about him a little bit. It's Dr. Dave, he's known as on campus and across the country. Dave Schramm is a professor and family life extension specialist at Utah State University in the Department of Human Development and Family Studies. He studies strong couple and family relationships and translates his family findings into leadership lessons and improving work cultures. I know that for a fact after talking to him before. After graduating with his PhD from Auburn University, he worked as a professor at the University of Missouri for 9 years. He must have started when he was 10. He looks pretty young there. Since arriving at USU in 2016, he's been appointed by Governor Herbert, or is it Abear? I don't know, but we'll call him Herbert, to serve on Utah's commissions on marriage. He appears on television's monthly on Fox 13's The Place, and he shares tips and videos on social media to help individuals, parents, and couples thrive in their life journeys. I have a lot more here that I could say about him, but he's got a TEDx talk that just came out, and he's just simply an awesome guy. Dave, welcome to the show.
Oh, man, Ken, it's so great to be back with you. Thanks for having me.
Oh, it's my pleasure. It's my pleasure. I enjoyed our conversation before. I just wanted to keep it going. So we'll have a little bit of a continuation and a little bit of an overlap today. But corporate culture, especially in credit unions where they're non-for-profits, they're doing so many good things out there in morale and teamwork is so important. Let's get to the real crux of it, because you're a family expert. How you have your work on family fundamentals, really segued into your work on workplace culture.
Yeah, it really did, Ken. I for the last 15 years or so, I've been in academia and I've studied families and close relationships and what makes for successful families and relationships, marriages, parent-child relationships. And then it wasn't until recently that I thought, this is interesting. Ken, our lives are actually split into, I call it the life pie of possibilities. Okay, so you imagine this pie, and it's divided into thirds. About 1/3 of our life, I refer to, at least our adult life, as the professional life. Most, many people at work. About 1/3 of our life is the personal life. So whether it's at home or if you're in a relationship or family, your leisure time, whatever you do in that other third. And then the other third is I call it the pleasant life, or basically sleep, right? So we have a third. And what I've been doing with my third of my professional life is actually studying about how to help people in their third in their personal life. And so these connections and the research that I've done, I think, has some interesting spillover. And these areas, they really do, right? If we don't get enough sleep, then we're grumpy around the people we're both at work. We don't perform as well. Our home life suffers. So you see that these three pies, these three slices, really affect each other. So that's kind of the big picture of where I'm coming from. Is my professional life has been studying about how to improve people's personal lives, and I've learned some interesting things lately.
Yeah, and there is the old adage that you spend a lot more time at work than you do at home or with your friends. So if you don't have a positive work balance or work life, I should say, work experience, as I like to say, that's obviously going to bleed into other areas of your life as well as to your career, right?
Yeah, oh, for sure. Yeah, these areas we have to keep them in check, because if there's way too much, or we're stressed out in one area, we bring it home. If we're stressed out from our work, we don't sleep well. So all these, it really is a matter of balancing these. And for the last few years, I've been studying and looking at these, what families do for their family members, and they meet can at least three fundamental human needs for surviving and thriving in this life. And so these three needs are essential. I'd love to talk about them a little bit, about
Please
how
go
they
for it.
influence both the home and the family and the workplace. And the first one is fundamental need is safety, right? This is our drive to survive. So not only are we talking about food, clothing, shelter, but as far as work, it's a paycheck, right? We have to have some money just to survive. But also there's a psychological safety as well. We've been hearing this a little bit more now in the workplace. So, am I psychologically safe? Do I feel like I can open up and be myself, or am I guarded? It's not a kind of a safe, environment where I can be. So that's the first need. The second need is satisfaction. And so families meet that need by we do fun things together, we have traditions, we go out, we play board games, we have ice cream, watch movies, all these types of things. The list is limitless as far as meeting that need for satisfaction. Now, in the workplace, it's interesting, because now more and more, especially I would say in the last decade, last maybe decade and a half, many workplaces are saying, hey, we need to provide some perks, right? Whether it's a meal or a ping pong table, foosball, let them have some time off, maybe go volunteer in the community,
Uh,
some pay time off, all these
Twister
types of
game,
things to make,
something.
yeah, that kind of stuff to kind of change up at work, to make it more tolerable, enjoyable at work, because the science in here shows that when we're happy and positive and we're satisfied, it turns on all the learning centers in the brain, right? We're more
Mhm.
productive, creativity increases, intelligence rises, all of these outcomes in the brain increase. And then that third need, so we need safety, satisfaction, and the third one is connection. We're all born with this longing for belonging, this craving for connection with other people. In the family sciences, we know it's really important for children with attachment, especially when children are young, to attach, to feel bonded, to feel close. Now, the connection is different, right, as
Right.
far as a family, but I still call it connection, in that, do I feel like, and it relates to some of the safety, like I have someone there I can talk with, we can laugh, we can have good times with, so we're satisfied. But is there someone that I can really open up to? Man, I'm really struggling. Or I've got this teenager that's driving me nuts, and someone that I can connect with. I have a friend. We have some friends or buddies or someone at work. So those three are critical, and that's really where I thought, I think I can take this research in family science and have it spill over into the workplace. And that's what I gave my TEDx talk about, is
Yeah.
actually these fundamental needs and how they improve work culture and business.
Sure. No, you're spot on. We joked the last time we talked that that you're a PhD in this family expertise. I'm sure you could say it better than I would. And had never taken a business class or worked in business, and I've never done any studies on family dynamics and so forth, and have an MBA in entrepreneurship and worked in business all my life. But yet through that very, very different curriculum, we've come to almost 100% exactly the same place in opinions on corporate culture. And two things that you said, which were really brought up some memories for me, not necessarily positive. Now, a word from our sponsor, Bator Training and Consulting. When it comes to sales training, do you force a process onto your employees, or is your staff part of the process of creating a unique business development process that aligns with your unique brand, culture, and strategy of your credit union? Obviously, given our tagline, creating environments where employees actually want to come to work and members want to keep coming back, we believe in creating a process from the ground up, not just stamping old 90s level sales training onto our employees and hope that they actually do roll out those tactics on a daily basis. At Bator Training and Consulting, we implement the B plus C plus S process. where we actually look at the brand, culture, and strategy of your credit union and take your frontline employees through a process of creating a process, a unique business development process for your credit union, rather than just old tactics that have been used at institutions for time after time that, sometimes they work and sometimes they just burn out your employees. So if you want to create a true unique branded process of business development and not just sales tactics for your credit union, talk to me, Kbator, at 714-681-2821 or at Kbator, Bator, at btcinc.net, and we'll talk about creating a unique business development process at your credit union. One that not only produces results, but also increases the morale at your unique institution. I won't mention the credit union, but a number of years ago, I did work at a credit union, and that culture really did not have the URE. It was really more of a cult. And you talk about safety. The CEO asked people to give their opinions in a very, very large meeting. I gave my opinion in this open forum. And later on, literally within 24 hours, my boss calls me in and says, "Come on in here." It's like, yeah, the CEO isn't very happy with you and what you said. And well, okay, then why are you asking? I didn't swear. I didn't call anybody out. I gave my opinion on a certain program. If you didn't agree with it, that's perfectly fine. Go in your direction. But now I'm not going to speak again. and that could. Yeah, and that connection was lost. Like, I'm not going to tell you, my boss, because I don't know where it's going to come from. I'm not going to tell anybody else because obviously this is more of a cult than a culture where nothing is behind closed doors, and it blew up the entire experience. And the last part of this that I'll mention, and I want you to comment on it, is that I talk about the fact of how culture really does transfer to the bottom line. And this was a large credit union that had quite a bit of resources. But if you went into that HR department at any one time, that fictitious or virtual revolving door was spinning. The HR departments were writing a severance check to this person. They were bringing this other person in. They were hiring for this job again. And to see not just from a standpoint of what that did to the morale, but more so what that actually did to the bottom line of that organization.
Yeah, you just nailed it. And that's a great example. And your example, sadly, is repeated day in and day out in countless cultures in business, whether it's credit unions or not. This is happening, and it's happening way too often, too much. They're not understanding this. Yeah. And what happens, and I'm going to talk a little bit about the families and say, yeah, this is the same thing that's happening there. Right? If a child mentions something and I don't like this, and then a parent just burns them and say, man, I'm not going to open up. I'm a teenager. I'm just going to keep it all in. And so what often happens in the workplace is that people will leave and quit their job or leave and stay at their job. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So they're leaving, they're checking out, but I'm staying because my need for safety, I have to have a paycheck. And until I can find somewhere else, but I'm checking out, I'm not satisfied, I'm not connected. Maybe only one of my three needs, and that for many people is enough. I'm gonna stay just for the paycheck, but man, I'm checked out. And that you just get that's toxic.
Yeah.
Again, if you only get people that are there for the paycheck and you're failing to meet those other two needs, it's gonna affect the bottom line sooner or later, and likely sooner. It's going to spill over, and you get one disgruntled and they're talking to this person like, this is horrible. Yeah, it is. And they create this spiral of chaos. And so it's sad of what's happening in too many workplaces.
Yeah, it actually, whether it's credit unions or other business, I partially joke but partially serious that if somebody quits and leaves, that's not necessarily as bad as somebody quitting and staying. That's tremendously worse. And also, for all my credit union friends out there, I'm very, very happy to say that over 25 years in the credit union industry, the experience that I just shared, fortunately, is the exception. and not the norm. Normally there's at least an average decent culture or a very good one. So fortunately that isn't the norm. But speaking of family, because I find, especially in the credit union industry, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, it's often a good thing, that they often have a family type culture. They have kind of a less of a corporate, more of a, hey, we're gonna party together, we're gonna picnic together, we're going to serve and help charities together, and we're gonna work together, which is a very positive type of dynamic. Talk a little bit about the value of treating employees like family, and what that really looks like in terms of improving a culture and the bottom line.
Yeah, you bet. And these are fundamental principles, but again, it's stemming from kind of the family, because before we went to work, right, we were in families, and I think there are some key ones. When I talk about strong families, I'm talking about principles such as gratitude, simply
Mm-hmm.
feeling valued and recognized. What was it? 81% of employees said that they would work harder for a grateful boss.
Yep.
35% report never being thanked by a manager. I think, that's a simple one. That one's free, but it's got to be specific. You can't say, hey, thanks everybody for working so hard for it. Yeah, that doesn't do much. But when it's very specific, that's simple. Another one is kindness, service, little random acts of kindness, right? I know, Ken, your favorite drink is Diet Coke or whatever it is, right? That here, occasionally, hey, I was just dropping by, or I got you a coffee, or whatever it is, little random acts of kindness. Families do that, and strong businesses do that as well. A few of these others, humor, play, right? Fun. We have good times, as you mentioned, together in families. It spills over into the workplace. Awareness, being aware of people's lives, especially you're talking about a credit union where there's not 1,000 employees, right? In
Right.
this
Usually,
area,
yeah.
that it's smaller. Yeah, that there is at these branches. I'm aware. I'm aware of maybe that you're going in for surgery this Friday, your family, or there's struggles, or your whatever it is, that there's people are aware of each other. When awareness creates that connection as well. Others in strong families, there's time together. We do celebrations. Maybe it's Fridays we have, or Taco Tuesdays, or these little fun things that we do together. Forgiveness, acceptance, and forgiveness in family cultures, but also in work cultures. You're going to bump into it. Whenever you're in an environment where you're around people 8 hours a day, family or at work. You're going to say things, you're going to do things, you're going to rub someone the wrong way. But one of the toxic things is being able then to hold that grudge and start talking about people behind their backs. That's poison. That's poison. So being quick to forgive. Other generosity, right? Openness, commitment, and trust. Family councils. There's family councils, and you mentioned, Ken, right? You get together. Here's a meeting, and hey, does anyone have anything to say? And you said something, and you got burned. But so those are some principles that happen in the family, and when those characteristics of strong families are happening in the workplaces, yeah, that's when I interviewed and actually visited some of the top workplaces as rated by Inc.com in the whole United States. And that's what I found is some of these strong characteristics. And it does affect the bottom line tremendously. When people are synergistic and we're working together, it's a higher cause, I'm contributing, I'm having fun, I feel safe, connected. It almost doesn't feel like work anymore. It's a joy to come and to help things grow and to be better.
Yeah. Yeah, to your point, not only in this last answer but the earlier one, you talked about connection, and one of the things that fortunately I was mentored on and learned at a couple of credit unions in very positive cultures, as well as saw the value of it on my own, is the tool of one-on-ones. Just scheduling time with your employees, each of them regularly, one-on-one, whether it's in your office, at a Starbucks, local coffee shop, conference room, whatever the heck it is, whether it's once a week, once a month, once every 2 weeks. I found that to be very, very valuable, and it's one of the tools. It's not very high tech, but it's one of the tools that I tell my clients, especially ones that are trying to maybe not have a poor culture, but are trying to improve it. You want to do one thing, do this. Schedule these one-on-ones and make sure, from a connection standpoint, maybe you schedule an hour. At least that's what I used to do. And I always was very, very clear with each employee. I said, you know what? I'm going to have about 5, maybe 10 minutes of stuff, to use a technical MBA term, stuff that I need to get through. Maybe it's a project we're working on or a new initiative I need to talk to you about or what have you, or we need to review an objective. But once I'm done with that, I just want to get that out of the way. It's your time. Yeah, if you want to take that last 45 to 55 minutes and talk about work, talk about career, even talk about something personal, the door is closed. It's to me, it's like, I'm a Catholic, it's like a confessional. I'm not going to go out and spread this unless it's something, really serious, like a harassment issue or illegal or something. And, I found employees, some of them, really talked about their personal life. And one in particular, poor guy, found out his wife was cheating on him with his best friend, and we had to work through that, and we that was the crux of our one-on-ones for weeks, and eventually he got out of it, which I'm really pleased. But some people too, the meetings would last 15 minutes. I really don't want to talk to you about personal stuff. I'd rather spend this time getting ahead on work. It's not a problem. I'm here for you. If you need it, I'm here. If you don't, this is your time and your way to use that. And I think that taps into more of, say, a family type culture than some of these big team like cultures. Would you agree with that, Dave, or am I just way off base?
No, I completely agree with that. That is a family culture, and it's interesting that we're talking about these one-on-ones, because just this Friday I took we have 3 daughters and a son. I took our youngest daughter out on a one-on-one daddy-daughter date.
Yeah.
It was so much fun. We laughed and we played her songs and took selfies, and I took her to Dairy Queen and had ice cream, and I built that relationship right one-on-one, and it was funny. And I asked her probably 50 questions just all about her life, and so it was getting to know, and that those moments, like, that pays off dividends as far as our relationship, the emotional connection, which is different than, you don't want that too much emotional connection at work. But to your point, you spent that time with that guy who's going through a struggle, and some people may say, but look what you're doing. He's not working and you're wasting time. And he could be doing, if they could see that the investment in that, when he feels like I can share, you're helping me through something personally, then I can go and I can manage it. I can feel like, I can give some time here.
Yeah.
But emotions have to be managed and dealt with first before behavior can be improved.
Yeah. To your point, that individual was one of my this was decades ago. Was one of my top employees before that happened. Really struggled for, I'd say, about a 2-3 month period, but then bounced back to being that top employee or better. And I don't think that would have happened if we didn't address that and he didn't know that he had a safe place. And by the way, I'm really ticked off because you didn't invite me for Dairy Queen. I love Dairy Queen, and I didn't get to go. But you mentioned favorite drink. My favorite drink is Blue Angel coffee, which I'm drinking right now. So you can make up for it. But anyhow,
right
anyhow,
right.
Be that as it may, the audience may have already figured out we enjoy talking to each other. So this may be a longer episode, but we're getting a lot of good stuff. Let's talk a little bit about, we talked about a family-oriented culture. Let's talk about the differences between family and team culture, because I believe, and I've never done any real deep technical work on this, but I found in one of my favorite articles from Harvard Business Review is the concept of stages of growth, that the business, much like a human being, they grow and they go through growing pains and so forth. The exact same thing happens to a business. And I find that as a business, especially credit unions, because I see a lot of this in this industry, as they grow up the stages of growth and they hit some of these growing pains, they find that this family culture, as much as they love it, that this business is screaming out for a little bit more structure, a little bit more process. And that has to tie into more of a team culture. Whereas, this person may not be coming to picnics with us, but darn it, this is exactly what the business needs, is his or her expertise. So we need to morph this, which is painful, from a family to a team culture. Can you talk a little bit from your perspective on that concept of going from a family to a team culture and some of the differences, and how that's not necessarily bad, it's just different?
Yeah, I like actually how you ended that, because it's not necessarily bad. It is different, and it's different in a few ways. And one is kind of the emotional connection, right? The connections may not be there. I may not, like, and you don't have to like. You don't even have to feel like, oh, I don't want to treat them like they bug me. There's something that drives me crazy. But I'm on this team, and we're working on a project, and we've got to get something done. And I'm going to rely on them for maybe their creativity, their insights. They're going to review this. That we've got to work together for a cause. And so when maybe we have our differences, and maybe we don't hang out after work or during work or do puzzles or ping pong or anything else, but that's when you say, okay, we've got to have a common goal, kind of this vision, right? This mission. We're contributing to a higher purpose, and that's okay if we are not. If we're each doing our team, right? There's still no me, right, and or I in team.
Yeah.
We still are contributing our very best to the bigger picture. And maybe we do some things on teamwork, and we have team meetings, we have these discussions, and maybe where we are open, and maybe some feedback that that wasn't the best for me, we need to do that. So when it comes to team, I think how we approach that is, especially when there's maybe some disagreements, and wow, we got to put our heads together, is tone, and how you can still be friendly, but the tone of voice in relationships we call it a harsh startup. I can predict with over about 96% accuracy, if you start your sentence, you come at me with a harsh tone, you say, hey, it's about freaking time you got this done.
Yeah.
If you come out with that harsh startup, there's only a 4% chance that thing is going to actually end, less than it began. But 96% of the time, that's going to spiral out. And so I think the approach is key, especially in teams where it's this, okay, we may not feel like family, but we've got to get this done. Um, Being able to draw on each other's strengths. So I'm a big fan of the Signature Strengths by Dr. Martin Seligman. So he's kind of the father of positive psychology, and everyone can actually fill this out for free. It's at AuthenticHappiness.org, and scientifically it's rigorous. You can go through and fill this out, and what it will do is it will kick out your top 5 signature strengths. Now, this is not singing and dancing things. These are like forgiveness and mercy.
Definitely wouldn't be on my list.
Yeah, no, not me either, man. I can't sing or dance at all. But I'm staring right now at the bottom of my computer screen over here, your top 5 strengths. I think it's that important. I print them out, I put them there, and I'm mine: gratitude, kindness and generosity, capacity to love, be loved, forgiveness, mercy. And so being aware of each other's team members' strengths, I think, is huge. I see taking even a team meeting and saying, hey, what are your top 5? Everyone has a minute. We do the survey, then we share our strengths. And you can say, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Because maybe yours is creativity and mine is kindness, gratitude. And so you think, oh, okay, if I let that person know, how grateful I am, right?
Yeah.
So you work on each other's strengths in a team, just like you would in basketball. There's someone that's tall, he's got a great jump shot. This one, hey, he's a great dribbler, let's put him as point guard. So you use your team mentality, and maybe that team, they don't go out to dinner, right? Maybe the Chicago Bulls or whatever, the Warriors, right? They don't go out and do everything as a family, but they're a team, and they draw on each other's and use each other's strengths. So I think that's a key point.
Yeah, I love that analogy. You're not going to put the 5'9" point guard that's great at shooting threes, in the paint. That's just that just doesn't make any sense.
Doesn't make sense.
Nor putting the 7'2" guy, at midcourt to to start running a play. That's perfect. I really love what you said. In terms of both tone and team. On the team standpoint, as these businesses, credit union or otherwise, are going through these pain points, the stages of growth, one of the things that I find, and I'm sure you're familiar with DISC. I've used DISC with clients before, and it's a great tool, don't get me wrong, but one that I found more interesting, especially for those organizations that are going through some of those pain points and trying to make that transition from family to team, is a tool called Team Dimensions. It doesn't go as deep into personality, but more into, how much, like your analogy of basketball, what are your strengths and how do you like to participate in a team? Some people are starters, some people are finishers, some people are refiners, where they're not going to come up with the idea or hold people accountable to finishing, but in that middle process, they're going to refine the ever-living heck out of it to where you're going to have a much better product at the end. And knowing that, I think being able to share that to begin with is a quality of the family culture, of that they're able to share, and that, hey, we're able to work more as a team and using some of these tools. And on the tone, I'll give my father a shout out. He was a very successful high school teacher for decades, I think over 40 years. And I remember, so many other classrooms were nuts, and he taught at my high school. And, especially with the substitute teachers, classes would tear these people apart. And he'd had his own class. He would also substitute. And his class, was never misbehaving, never out of line. And two, they were always having fun. And, I asked him, kind of what the secret is. And he says, one, you don't tolerate any garbage right from the very beginning, because as soon as you do, then people keep pushing back. But also, from a tone standpoint, there are certain rules to my class. You're not going to read the newspaper in my class. And when I see somebody reading the newspaper, I say, put it away, and now you have to leave. And like, no, I'll put it away. It's like, no, you don't understand. We can still be friends. I'm not even angry, but this is the rule. You read the newspaper in class. Now you have to put it away and go wherever. I don't really care. Go to the bathroom, go to the bus bench, go home, go to wherever. I don't care, but you no longer have the right to be in this class today. And that tone was like, all right, I'm kind of in trouble, but I'm not. So that tone is really important.
Oh, man, it really is. And your dad was amazing. So underneath that tone, even, I think about these three words, and we may have talked about it before, and this little kind of pyramid of positivity that your listeners, they can understand. At the bottom of this is connection. That people will be so much more open to so it goes connection, direction, and correction up at the top. But if you tried to correct somebody, like your dad, if he didn't have a good relationship, if there wasn't respect, back and forth, and he was just a jerk and said, hey, you idiot, get out of my class, you're not going to read that. Yeah. Right? That relationship is just like, oh, forget you. Yeah, so it's gone. So having that connection with employees, and that's built with these one-on-ones, the kindness and the gratitude, then people are more open to the teaching, even speaking about teachers, but this is managers or anybody else at work, they're open to the direction. And then when correction is going to be needed, right? We don't kick somebody if they make a mistake, kind of depending on the degree of the mistake, but we don't just kick them out and be like, man, how did you do that? What were you thinking, you idiot? So it's important to get those right, because so much time is spent up here, correcting, but we have to invest from the bottom up with connection before correction.
Yeah. Well, yeah, in your work with organizations and even with families, is there a top recommendation that you would make with businesses, especially credit unions, nonprofits that are maybe struggling with morale, that they may be able to use this one tip or this one idea that helps them at least a little bit, even today?
Yeah, I might even give them an acronym, easy to remember, BAG, B-A-G. And it simply is be a giver. When you're a giver and you give of your time, you give gratitude, you give kindness, you give. It's magnetic, right? When you have this interest in their well-being, personally, professionally, then you give. And givers, and it really stems from inside, right? The character of that person, but that's one of the easiest things to do. And these studies that I've looked at, Martin Seligman's studies he's done over the last couple decades, literally hundreds of research studies have shown that an act of kindness, a single act of kindness, produces the most reliable, right, momentary increase in well-being of any exercise they've ever tested. So be a giver. Be a giver. Turn outward instead of inward. And it's tough to do, especially during stressful times and strained relationships, because the
Right.
tendency is to turn inward. But turn outward and be a giver.
That's awesome. You know, Dr. Dave, I could talk to you for another 2 hours,
Yes,
but
me too. Let's do it.
and maybe we will, you know, collectively. But we'll wrap up the show because you've given so many great points of knowledge and tips that we have more than enough content for one show. So I will ask one last question: is just simply, you know, if any of our credit union friends out there want to find out more about you, where can they best find you online and in the so-called universe?
Yeah, you bet. I'm on LinkedIn for those who are on LinkedIn. David Schramm under LinkedIn, but also I've got a website. It's Dr. Dave Schramm, and Dr. Dave instead of spelled out doctor. So drdaveschramm.com. And there, yeah, I've got all kinds of resources and helps that people can access there. So
Awesome. So you can find them there. We'll definitely put your TEDx talk on the show notes. Congratulations on that, big time. Also, thank you for being on the other show, Cool Culture Corner. We'll put the link there so they could have a whole David Schramm afternoon if they want to learn more from all of these resources. But most importantly, Doc, you know, thanks for being on with me again. Thanks for being on the Credit Union Business News podcast and giving us some very superb insight. Thank you.
yeah, thanks so much, Ken, for having me on again. It's always a pleasure. Have so much fun. Thanks.
it is a lot of fun, and I hope that all of you that are either watching or listening to the audio version of this podcast enjoyed it as well. And we will, of course, be coming at you again in about 2 weeks with another episode of the Credit Union Business News podcast. Take care. Learn more about Credit Union Business News at creditunionbusiness.com. Suggestions for the Credit Union Business News podcast can be directed to Tim O'Hara at tim@cubusiness.com or Ken Bator at kbator, Bator, at btcinc.net. To learn more about this episode's sponsor, please go to btcinc.net.